Yo, I'm Jeff Spizak, and welcome to my bed. My whole life I've been obsessed with making art, since I was a child. I used to draw and stuff like that. I used to make these little VHS movies. Then I moved into making music for a long time. And then I got back into movies. But one thing has held true throughout my whole artistic career, if you can even call it that when you're 15, but I'm 38 now, is that the work that I've made that I like the best and that I've progressively been called towards more and more is art that is about my life. My personal life, thoughts, whatever. And I found that even growing up, the things that I like to, I hate to use the word consume, the art that I like to consume, was also stuff that was deeply personal by other people. For example, I always liked the Beatles, and I always found myself to be a John Lennon guy. And as I got older, 17, 18, I found out the reason why, and it was that his work is just, especially as he progresses throughout, and especially after the Beatles, his work is just very personal. Starting from Rubber Soul, but really around the White Album. And then that leads into Plastic Ono Band, which is one of the great autobiographical albums ever. Even more than albums, just work of art ever. But there's been so many things that have followed that are really good, especially in the realm of music. And I feel like it's way more acceptable to make personal art in the realm of music. When you and in books, obviously too, it's probably way more in books than anything. Because you start to get into other mediums or whatever, like film. And a lot of people will say, well, this is self-indulgent or something like that. And it is hard, I guess, to walk that line of, am I just, wanking with, this movie I'm making or whatever. But for me personally, I don't even think about that. I don't even care that much, because I am just compelled to talk about my life. But I almost feel that it's unfair in some ways to even call myself an artist because of that, I guess. Because I'm just continuously driven towards more and more, raw, personal things. I used to do a lot of comedy in music and stuff like that. Not that I made comedy music, but I made, songs that had a lot of jokes, or the premise was a joke or whatever. I mean, even if it was about my life, I had moments where it wasn't. Like in 2011, I released this album called Love Child, and a couple of albums after that where I was in this crazy deep depression, and those were more autobiographical albums, and the songs on there were more about me, but there was still, a lot of jokes thrown in and stuff. But I kind of went back to that. People always reacted to the funny stuff. And I did that for a long time. And finally, a couple of years ago, I just got tired of it. I got tired of being, looked at as the guy who does the clever songs. I still enjoy that a little bit, but it just became something that I didn't want to be identified as anymore. At least not like in totality. Sure, there's like elements of that. So I started making zines 2 years ago. Zines, which would be personal zines. I don't know a lot about that world. I'm just a baby in there. I just know a little bit. And I decided when I made these things, I was just going to, talk about my life, write about it, write, poetry, take photographs, draw things that I saw around town, particularly trees. If you've read the book, I love trees. And I did that for a couple of months, and like the response to that work, those zines, was way different than what I'd ever really received from music. And it was much more fulfilling to have people kind of connect with the work in a different way and engage with it. And so I made like 4 of these zines over a couple of months. And then from there, I'd always been interested in film as well, and I went to school for that and all that good stuff. Not film school, but I'd like a specialized school. And so I started making movies. I was like, man, these zines, I could imagine, like, how could we take these to the next level? Let's try to turn them into movies. So what I did was I had this old mini DV camera laying around that I used to transfer some tapes a few years back, and I put it to work. I just started walking around, filming with it and talking while I was filming, saying whatever as I'm filming. Diegetic sound, nothing recorded after. And we're skipping a lot of stuff because I was a wedding videographer for a long time, and I did make almost, very like cinema verite kinds of movies with, high quality cameras and stuff, but nothing, a couple of they're like monologue movies, finely written out and stuff. And I did like that stuff, but it was still personal, but that's a different story. The zines to the mini DV is like where things really kind of started taking off. And when I've begun to find my voice, when I was like 36. So I made a 15-minute diary film using the mini DV camera. I put that out, and the reaction was really good as well. I felt like even more than the zines, people were really like seeing themselves in it and stuff. And so, I'd always been interested in social media and stuff, and I started experimenting with TikTok. And I was taking clips, short clips from the films, or the film at that time, which is called Jeff Spizak, the movie. And I made a couple of trailers and put them on TikTok because I was like, I don't want to annoy my friends on Instagram, so I'll put them on TikTok. And I put these videos on TikTok, and they started like gaining traction. And so I thought, I've always like short writings and writing poetry and stuff like that. So I started, doing that and mixing it with some of the footage that I shot. And just like a way more condensed version of the diary films. And I put that out. Started putting out, short like micro poetry reels is what I call them. And those took off, and like pretty quickly one of them went viral and ended up getting, over 1 million views on TikTok and stuff, like within the first 8 or 9 posts. And I was like, holy shit. So I decided, I don't care about my friends on Instagram anymore if they're going to get annoyed or whatever. I'm just going to start posting this stuff there. So I started doing that. And then the same thing happened over there. And I've posted every day for the last 8 months since. And I've made a couple of diary films. And it's paid off. I never could have foreseen the reaction, the messages and stuff that I get. I've got people telling me that they like cut pages out of my books and like put them on their walls and stuff. A lot of the people that, follow me are younger. And because they're on social media and all that, like, Instagram and TikTok skew a little bit younger. But yeah, it's been really gratifying. But I still have this feeling that I need to do more, and that I'm not really, like, I'm starting to burn out a little bit. So I've decided that I'm gonna, like, repost all my old, micro poetry reels while I work on a feature over the summer, like a feature diary film. But it's not just gonna be, me talking to a camera. It's gonna be more written out. I'm gonna write it out. I'm gonna make a big book, and it's gonna be written out. But then I'm also gonna take the writings and insert them into the film, and maybe shoot a little more intentionally around that stuff. But yeah, it's been very uplifting to do this type of work, even though a lot of the subject matter is depressing. It feels good. It's therapeutic. And that's what I admire about art. And I'm happy that I went even more personal and stopped taking myself as a joke, even though I still think that I am. But in all seriousness, it has paid off for me. I never could have imagined any of this. And I think there's a lot more to do, and there's a lot further to go. And I see, like, endless potential with this work. But I also don't want to burn myself out doing 10-second reels every day and, like, wasting good ideas that could be fleshed out further. But my love for personal art outside of film and music and writing, everything like that, and my desire to create that kind of stuff has paid off. And not a lot of people do it. And yes, it can be perceived as self-indulgent or whatever. And sometimes it is. I feel like maybe mine can get that way sometimes, but I don't know. As long as it feels right to you and people are connecting to it, then I don't think there's any harm in it. The people who don't like it, it's not for them. I've always heard there's, like, a common saying that supposedly, I might be, the more personal a work gets, the more universal it actually is. So I kind of live by that, and it's great. And I won't expound or whatever, get into the specific works that I like, despite mentioning, Plastic Ono Band. But we'll do other videos on that, I guess, and filmmakers that I like who do personal documentaries and things like that. And yeah, I think it's really important to, if you're interested, and I don't think, obviously, everybody shouldn't do this. We need great fiction and stuff like that. But if you feel pulled towards just making things about yourself, then do it. Do it. Don't be afraid. Because the more honest you are, the more people are gonna, like, latch on to what you're saying. And don't worry about being pretentious or whatever. Just speak from the heart and make what you have to make, and make what you feel called to make. You can make a movie without actors and without a script and without money. But that's a video for another time. But that's the lesson of it all. Thanks for being here, and thanks for following around. It's been great.